Hello there. Welcome. I was just about to read a story. You're more than welcome to sit down, relax, and I'm happy to read it aloud. Let's go on this journey together. Grab a drink, sit back, relax. Let's get started. An Honest Thief by Fyodor Dostoevsky.
Surely you might undertake some other duty, Emelianushka, instead of lying here guarding the steps, I said.
Why? What other duty, Astafy Ivanovich?
You lost soul! I was in such a rage. I called him that. If you could but learn tailoring work. Look at your old rag of a coat. It's not enough to have it on tatters. Here you are sweeping the steps with it. You might take a needle and boggle up your rags, as decency demands. Ah! You drunken man! What do you think, sir? He actually did take a needle. Of course, I said it in jest, but he was so scared he set to work. He took off his coat and began threading the needle. I watched him. As you may well guess, his eyes were all red and bleary, and his hands were all of a shake. He kept shoving and shoving the thread, and could not get it through the eye of the needle. He kept screwing his eyes up and wetting the thread, and twisting it in his fingers. It was no good. He gave it up and looked at me. "Well," said I, "this is a nice way to treat me. If there'd been folks by to see, I don't know what I should have done." "Why, you simple fellow, I said it to you in joke, as a reproach. Give over your nonsense, God bless you. Sit quiet and don't put me to shame. Don't sleep in my stairs and make a laughing stock of me."
Why, what am I to do, Astafy Ivanovich? I know very well I am a drunkard and a good-for-nothing. I can do nothing but vex you, my benefactor.
And at that, his blue lips began all of a sudden to quiver, and tear ran down his white cheek and tremble on his stubbly chin. And then poor Emelianushka burst into a regular flood of tears. Mercy on us! I felt as though a knife were thrust into my heart. The sensitive creature. I'd never have expected it. Who could have guessed it? No, Emelianushka, thought I shall never give you up altogether. You can go your way like the rubbish you are. Well, sir, why make a long story of it? And the whole affair is so trifling, it's not worth wasting words upon. Why, you, for instance, sir, would not have given a thought to it. But I would have given a great deal, if I had a great deal to give. That it never should have happened at all. I had a pair of riding breeches by me, sir. Deuce take them, fine. First-rate riding breeches they were, too, blue with a check on it. They'd been ordered by a gentleman from the country, but he would not have them after all, said they were not full enough. So they were left on my hands. It struck me they were worth something. At the second-hand dealers, I ought to get 5 silver rubles for them. Or, if not, I could take them into 2 pairs of trousers for Petersburg gentlemen, and have a piece over for a waistcoat for myself. Of course, for poor people like us, everything comes in. And it happened just then that Emelianushka was having a sad time of it. There he sat day after day. He did not drink. Not a drop passed his lips. But he sat and moped like an owl. It was sad to see him. He just sat and brooded. Well, I thought, either you've not got a copper to spend, my lad, or else you're turning over a new leaf of yourself. You've given it up. You've listened to reason. Well, sir, that's how it was with us. And just then came a holiday. I went to Vespers, and when I came home, I found Emelianushka sitting in the window, drunk and rocking to and fro. Ah, so that's what you've been up to, my lad. And I went to get something out of my chest, and when I looked in, the breeches were not there. I rummaged here and there. They vanished. When I'd ransacked everywhere and saw that they were not there, something seemed to stab me in my heart. I ran first to the old dame and began accusing her. Of Emelianushka I had not the faintest suspicion, though there was cause for it in his sitting there drunk. "No," said the old body. "God be with you, my fine gentleman. What good are riding breeches to me? Am I going to wear such things? Why, a skirt I had lost the other day through a fellow of your sort. I know nothing. I can tell you nothing about it," she said. "Who has been here? Who has been in?" I asked. "Why, nobody has been, my good sir," she says. "I've been here all the while. Emelian Ilyich went out and came back again. There he sits. Ask him." "Emelianushka," said I, "have you taken those new riding breeches for anything? You remember the pair I made for that gentleman from the country?" "No, Astafey Ivanovich," said he. "I've not sort of touched them." I was in a state. I hunted high and low for them. They were nowhere to be found, and Emelianushka sits there rocking himself to and fro. I was squatting on my heels facing him, bending over the chest, and all at once I stole a glance at him. Alack, I thought. My heart suddenly grew hot within me, and I felt myself flushing up too, and suddenly Emelianushka looked at me. "No, Astafey Ivanovich," said he. "Those riding breeches were yours. Maybe you were thinking, maybe I took them, but I never touched them." But what could have become of them, Emelian Ilyich? "No, Astafey Ivanovich," said he. "I've not seen him." "Why, Emelian Ilyich, I suppose they've run off themselves, eh?" Maybe they have, Astafey Ivanovich." When I heard him say that, I got up at once, went up to him, lighted the lamp, and sat down to work to my sewing. I was altering a waistcoat for a clerk who had lived below us, and wasn't there a burning pain and ache in my breast? I shouldn't have minded so much if I had put all the clothes I had on the fire. Emelianushka seemed to have an inkling of what rage I was in. When a man is guilty, you know, sir. He scents trouble far off, like the birds of the air before a storm. Do you know what, Astafey Ivanovich?" Emelianushka began, and his poor old voice was shaking as he said the words. "Antip Prohorich, the apothecary, married the coachman's wife this morning, who died the other day." I gave him a look, sir. A nasty look it was. Emelianushka understood it too. I saw him get up, go to the bed, and began to rummage there for something. I waited. He was busy there a long time, and kept muttering all the while. "No, not there. Where can the blessed things have got to?" I waited to see what he'd do. I saw him creep under the bed on all fours. I couldn't bear it on longer. "What are you crawling about under the bed for, Emelianushka?" said I. Looking for the breeches, Astafey Ivanovich. Maybe they've dropped down there somewhere." "Why should you try and help a poor, simple man like me?" said I. "Crawling on your knees for nothing, sir?" I called him that in my vexation.
Oh, never mind, Astafay Ivanovich. I'll just look. They'll turn up, maybe, somewhere.
Said I. Look here, Emelian Ilyich.
What is it, Astafay Ivanovich?
Said he. Haven't you simply stolen them from me like a thief and a robber, in return for the bread and salt you've eaten here? Said I. I felt so angry, sir, at seeing him fooling about on his knees before me.
No, Astafay Ivanovich.
And he stayed lying, as he was on his face under the bed. A long time he lay there, and then at last crept out. I looked at him, and the man was as white as a sheet. He stood up, and sat down near me in the window, and sat so for some 10 minutes.
No, Astafay Ivanovich,
he said, and all at once he stood up and came towards me. And I can see him now. He looked dreadful.
No, Astafay Ivanovich,
said he.
I never sort of touched your breeches.
He was all of a shake, poking himself in the chest with a trembling finger, and his poor old voice shook so that I was frightened, and sat as though I was rooted to the window seat. Well, Emelian Ilyich, said I, as you will, forgive me if I, in my foolishness, have accused you unjustly. As for my breeches, let them hang. We can live without them. We've still our hands, thank God. We need not go thieving or begging from some other poor man. We'll earn our bread. Emelianushka heard me out and went out, standing there before me. I looked up, and he had sat down. And there he sat all evening without stirring. At last I lay down to sleep. Emelianushka went on sitting in the same place. When I looked out in the morning, he was lying, curled up in his old coat on the bare floor. He felt too crushed even to come to bed. Well, sir, I felt no more liking for the fellow from that day. In fact, for the first few days I hated him. I felt, as one may say, as though my own son had robbed me and done me a deadly hurt. Ach, I thought, Emelianushka, and Emelianushka, sir, went on drinking for a whole fortnight without stopping. He was drunk all the time and regularly besotted. He went out in the morning and came back late at night, and for a whole fortnight I didn't get a word out of him. It was as though grief was gnawing at his heart, or as though he wanted to do for himself completely. At last he stopped. He must have come to the end of all he'd got, and then he sat in the window again. I remember he sat there without speaking for 3 days and 3 nights. All of a sudden, I saw that he was crying. He was just sitting there, sir, and crying like anything. A perfect stream, as though he didn't know how his tears were flowing. And it's a sad thing, sir, to see a grown man, and an old man, too, crying from woe and grief. What's the matter, Emelianushka? Said I. He began to tremble so that he shook all over.
Nothing, Astafay Ivanovich.
God be with you, Emelianushka. What's lost is lost. Why are you moping about like this? I felt sorry for him.
Oh, nothing, Astafay Ivanovich. It's no matter. I want to find some work to do, Astave Ivanovich.
And what sort of work, pray, Emelianushka?
Why, any sort. Perhaps I could find a situation such as I used to have. I've been all ready to ask Fyodor Ivanovich. I don't like to be a burden on you, Astave Ivanovich. If I could find a situation, Astave Ivanovich, then I'll pay it back, all back, and make you a return for all your hospitality.
Enough, Emelianushka, enough. Let bygones be bygones and no more be said about it. Let us go on as we used to do before.
No, Astave Ivanovich, you maybe think, but I never touched your riding breeches.
Well, have it your own way. God be with you, Emelianushka.
No, Astave Ivanovich, I can't go on living with you. That's clear. You must accuse me, Astave Ivanovich.
Why, God bless you, Emelian Ilovich. Who's offending you and driving you out of this place? Am I doing it?
No, it's not the proper thing for me to live with you like this, Astave Ivanovich. I'd better be going.
He was so hurt. He seemed he stuck to his point. I looked at him, and sure enough, he got up, pulled on his coat, over his shoulders, and left. Where are you going, Emelianushka? Listen to reason. What are you doing? Where are you off to?
No. Goodbye, Astave Ivanovich, and don't keep me now. And he was blubbering again. I'd better be going. You're not the same now.
Not the same as what? I am the same. But you'll be lost by yourself like a poor helpless babe, Emelian Ilyich.
No, Astave Ivanovich. When you go out now, you lock up your chest, and it makes me cry to see it, Astave Ivanovich. You'd better let me go, Astave Ivanovich, and forgive me all the trouble I've given you while I've been living with you.
Well, sir, the man went away. I waited for the day. I expected he'd be back in the evening. No. Next day, no sign of him, nor the third day either. I began to get frightened. I was so worried I couldn't drink. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. The fellow had quite disarmed me. On the fourth day I went out to look for him. I peeped into all the taverns to inquire about him, but no, Emelianushka was lost. Have you managed to keep yourself alive, Emelianushka? I wondered. Perhaps he is lying dead under some hedge, poor drunkard, like a sodden log. I went home more dead than alive. Next day I went out to look for him again, and I kept cursing myself that I'd been such a fool as to let the man go off by himself. On the fifth day it was a holiday. In the early morning I heard the door creak. I looked up, and there was my Emelianushka coming in. His face was blue and his hair was covered with dirt as though he'd been sleeping in the street. He was as thin as a match. He took off his coat, sat down on the chest and looked at me. I was delighted to see him, but I felt more upset about him than ever. For you see, sir, if I had been overtaken in some sin, as true as I am here, sir, I'd have died like a dog before I'd have come back. But Emelianushka did come back. And a sad thing it was, sure enough, to see a man sunk so low. I began to look after him, to talk kindly to him, to comfort him. Well, Emelianushka, said I, I'm glad you've come back. Had you been away much longer, I should have gone to look for you in the taverns again today. Are you hungry?
No, Astave Ivanovich.
Come now. Aren't you really? Here, brother. Here's some cabbage soup left over from yesterday. There was meat in it. It is good stuff. And there is some bread and onion. Come, eat it. It'll do you no harm. I made him eat it. And I saw at once that the man had not tasted food for maybe 3 days. He was hungry as a wolf. So it was hunger that had driven him to me. My heart was melted looking at the poor dear. Let me run to the tavern tonight, thought I. I'll get something to ease his heart, and we'll make an end of it. I've no more anger in my heart against you, Emelianushka. I brought him some vodka. Here, Emelian Ilovich. Let us drink for the holiday. Like a drink? And it will do you good. He held out his hand, held it out greedily. He was just taking it, and then he stopped himself. But a minute after I saw him take it and lift it to his mouth, spilling it on his sleeve. But though he got it to his lips, he set it down on the table again. What is it, Emelianushka?
Nothing, Astafay Ivanovich. I sort of...
Won't you drink it?
Well, Astafay Ivanovich, I'm not sort of going to drink anymore, Astafay Ivanovich.
Do you mean you've given it up altogether, Emelianushka? Or you're only not going to drink today? He did not answer. A minute later, I saw him rest his head on his hand. What's the matter, Emelianushka? Are you ill?
Why, yes, Astafay Ivanovich, I don't feel well.
I took him and laid him down on the bed. I saw that he really was ill. His head was burning hot, and he was shivering with fever. I sat by him all day. Towards night, he was worse. I mixed him some oil and onion and kvass and bread broken up. Eat some of this, said I, and perhaps you'll be better. He shook his head.
No, said he. I won't have any dinner today, Astafay Ivanovich.
I made some tea for him. I quite flustered our old woman. He was no better. Well, thinks I, it's a bad lookout. The third morning I went for a medical gentleman. There was one I knew living close by, Kostrobov by name. I'd made his acquaintance when I was in service with the Bossyakins. He'd attended me. The doctor came and looked at him.
He's in a bad way,
said he.
It was no use sending for me, but if you like I can give him a powder.
Well, I didn't give him a powder. I thought that's just the doctor's little game. And then the 5th day came. He lay, sir, dying before my eyes. I sat in the window with my work in my hands. The old woman was heating the stove. We were all silent. My heart was simply breaking for him. The good-for-nothing fellow. I felt as if it were a son of my own I was losing. I knew that Emelianushka was looking at me. I'd seen the man all the day, making up his mind to say something and not daring to. At last I look up at him. I saw such misery in the poor fellow's eyes. He had kept them fixed on me. And when he saw that I was looking at him, he looked down at once. Astafay Ivanovich. What is it, Emelianushka?
If you were to take my old coat to a second-hand dealer's, how much do you think they'd give you for it, Astafay Ivanovich?
There's no knowing how much they'd give. Maybe they'd give me a couple of ruble for it, Emilia Ilyich. But if I had taken it, they wouldn't have given a farthing for it. But they would have laughed in my face for bringing such a trumpety thing. I simply said that to comfort the poor fellow, knowing the simpleton he was.
But I was thinking, Astave Ivanovich, they might give you 3 rubles for it. It's made of cloth, Astave Ivanovich. How could they only give 1 ruble for a cloth coat?
I don't know, Emelian Ilyich, said I. If you are thinking of taking it, you should certainly ask for 3 rubles to begin with. Emelianushka was silent for a time, and then he addressed me again.
Astave Ivanovich.
What is it, Emelianushka? I asked.
Sell my coat when I die, and don't bury me in it. I can lie as well without it, and it's a thing of some value, and might come in useful.
I can't tell you how it made my heart ache to hear him. I saw that the death agony was coming in. We were silent again for a bit, so an hour passed by. I looked at him again. He was still staring at me, and when he met my eyes, he looked down again. Do you want some water to drink, Emelian Ilyich? I asked.
Give me some. God bless you, Astave Ivanovich.
I gave him a drink.
Thank you, Astave Ivanovich,
said he.
Is there
anything else you would like, Emelianushka?
No, Astave Ivanovich. There's nothing I want. But I sort of...
What?
I only...
What is it, Emelianushka?
Those riding breeches. It was... sort of... I who took them. Astave Ivanovich.
Will God forgive you, Emelianushka, said I. You poor, sorrowful creature. Depart in peace. And I was choking myself, sir. And the tears were in my eyes. I turned aside for a moment.
Astave Ivanovich.
I saw Emelianushka wanted to tell me something. He was trying to sit up, trying to speak, and mumbled something. He flushed red all over suddenly, looked at me. Then I saw him turn white again. Whiter and whiter. And he seemed to sink away, all in a minute. His head fell back. He drew one breath and gave up his soul to God. Well, that's the end of An Honest Thief. Was not expecting that end. I really enjoyed that book. Join me next week. We'll have a new story. Hope to see you there.